Alright guys, welcome back to Valorant News. Major drama going down in the Valorant world again today. What is going on at Edward Gaming after all the drama over the last few months? The Simon drama that happened earlier this year, bringing Gen.G into the team and then dropping him for ZJC after all the drama in recent weeks. Now it seems they're going back on that change. What's happening at that organisation and what's happening around the world as well? Verno in-game leading MIBR. What are they cooking up? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate a pretty funny reply to this from Crashies, as we well know. But let's continue. DFM Academy. So we know that DFM, they went on quite a losing run. And it's funny to look back at this because I wasn't really aware of this, that their academy was on an equally disastrous streak. They just got 2-0'd for basically every game forever. But in the same way that the main DFM team beat the Zeta team the other day, they finally got a win. They actually 2-1'd the Zeta Academy. So yeah, absolute scenes in the challenger side of, you know, the Japanese split 3. DFM Academy finally get a victory on the board to break the curse there. But this is a pretty major update really that comes out of Bruno Popoleri last night discussing changes with MIBR. Now, does this smell of desperation? I think the argue could well be yes. But this is a remarkable arc. Now, we know that Verno is probably a more vocal player than he appeared when he was on NRG, right? And it's funny to think about the idea of Verno being a player who the community meme was that the guy wouldn't talk, right? Like he just sat there and played and didn't really care, wasn't very locked in, didn't really like to speak or to communicate or to say too many words more than was absolutely necessary, just like to sit there and play Valorant. The idea of that player who was memed in that way, now becoming the in-game leader of a full Brazilian team, is probably one of the more remarkable timelines you're going to witness. But this is the rumour that Verno is going to take on that in-game leadership role over there at MIBR. So Artzan is not going to be the in-game leader anymore. And, you know, there has been a feeling, as the article describes, that he's been the second caller for some time. The change will basically be a role swap as well, because Artzan will be the second caller now, but Verno will be the primary in-game leader of this MIBR team. So is that a good idea? It's tough to imagine that it is. I don't know. Like MIBR, we know that they've been struggling a bit. Earlier this season, it was, I mean, they went on this great run during the playoffs, managed to qualify internationally. They turned up to Toronto, didn't really go to plan. They turned up to the EWC qualifier, that didn't go to plan. So, and now they started off with a 2-1 loss to Crew. So, I mean, you guys can see over their recent games, it has been a, you know, where they were here, it's been a bit of a downhill spiral. So, they're looking for something to arrest that, and it makes sense. But they've started off 0-1 this stage. Their game next is against Lev, then against 100T, then against NRG, then against Loud. So it's just a very spicy group, and they feel like maybe Verno on the in-game leadership role is going to be their saviour. Pretty remarkable to think about, but we'll see how it goes. Feels like one of those changes that if they don't make any sort of change, they do not feel confident that anything is going to work out in their favour. So yeah, Aspas getting in-game leaded by Verno, not something I expected to see when the season got underway. There have also been games, of course, going on in the Pacific. We're going to talk about the Chinese region in a second. Texture finally, by the way, got an ace without it getting stolen. So here are a couple of kills, and then Crystal actually gets revived. So, I mean, you might consider it an ace or you might not, to be fair, but he did technically get 5 kills in the round, which counts as an ace, so I guess that kind of works. But in the Pacific, this is what is presently going on, and yeah, that series, Gen.G versus Global Esports, is now tied up at 1-1. The game one, though, was a 13-3 on that icebox in the end. Yeah, Texture had the ace, but apart from that, Global Esports absolutely slammed them, which was not really expected. That was their pick, to be fair. And then the Haven, Gen.G just decimated them right back. So now they're loading into a Corrode. Of course, Gen.G are going to be the favourites to close it out, but it does show at least some good promise lately from GE that they've made some of the developments in the trajectory that they have done. Talon played DFM as well relatively shortly, and then there's plenty of games over the next couple of days as well. But this one is particularly compelling, this Gen.G versus Global Esports one, because every single team in that group right now is 1-1. It's very much all to play for when it comes to Group A, and that would be massive for Global Esports if they can win this map 3 on the Corrode against Gen.G. In Europe, there were some crazy results yesterday as well. I mean, this was just totally unacceptable, really. I mean, it was 12-4 to Gentlemates on the Corrode. And, I mean, of course, the Heretics team that just won the Esports World Cup, like, hypothetically, no way that you could possibly lose this game. And even, yeah, okay, Woot makes a crazy play, comes in, gets a nice little 3k here, and puts them back on track to maybe win, you know, win at least this round. But they were 12-4 down. Almost unfathomable to imagine that Gentlemates could lose this from here, but they managed to do so. They just squandered everything, and as we can see from the Corrode here, Heretics then won all of those rounds in a row, took it to an overtime, won the overtime 14-12, like, to completely, theoretically, just break the spirit of Gentlemates. And then the Ascent came around, and they did the same thing. They went up 10-2 on the first half. Heretics then bounced back with a 10-2 on the second half. I guess fair play to Gentlemates, because having gone down here 12-11, they actually then proceeded to win the next 3 rounds to take it at least to a bind, but then they got to the bind and got crushed 13-5. So, yeah, I mean, look, Heretics were obviously going to be the favourites, but still crazy, right? The Gentlemates managed to squander 2 huge leads, 2 maps in a row. They finally didn't get comebacked on the Ascent, but if they hadn't done on the Corrode, it could have been a very different story. So that's where they went down. Liquid went down, or Liquid beat Na'Vi. Na'Vi went down to Liquid. So yeah, Keiko with a big series. This wasn't especially competitive. 13-7, 13-4 in the end. So Na'Vi continuing really to struggle for where they, you know, really, I feel like they've not much identity on that Na'Vi team right now, and they're just getting slammed most weeks at the moment compared to teams that are actually more well put together. And this is the way that things look. So it's for esports Vitality, a really big game there, and then Movistar Koi versus Fnatic to close out the weekend of matches in Europe. But let's talk about this drama in the Chinese side, because, you know, I don't know what they're cooking up here, but this is pretty crazy. So, if you guys remember at the start of the year, I mean, okay, last year, Edward are still the reigning Valorant World Champions. They won the tournament with Simon. There was some drama with Simon earlier in the year. They weren't very happy with his work ethic and other things. He came out with some perspectives. They came out with their perspectives. They dropped him. They got rid of him from the team, and that was that basically. Gen.G came in, and they did okay with Gen.G, but they still weren't as good as maybe they were before. And this is the issue. When you've become the best team in the world, maintaining it is always far more challenging than getting there in the first place. And when you make a change and it's not able to unlock what you previously had, and even Kang has mentioned about motivation and stuff like this, I think as well, that things start to potentially downhill spiral. So today there were rumours that Gen.G is back in. So they brought in Alphabet Man, now known and shortened to ZJC, and his first series he kind of got slammed and it wasn't really looking great. And maybe their confidence in that team and that iteration in their practice is simply non-existent, because today it's been confirmed this is the announcement for VCT China for their matchup that's happening very shortly between Edward and Tyloo. And Tyloo have their roster, and Edward Gaming have Chichu, Kang, Gen.G, Nobody, and Smoggy is back in the team. So Gen.G is magically back. I mean, if we look at the Edward Gaming team, they have obviously been struggling. If we look at their matches, right, I mean, they had all the drama earlier in the year, as we know, like when they lost to Billy Billy, for example, in the playoffs. That was when they had Gen.G in the team. He had a difficult series there. They then, as of recent, made the changes, right? They brought in ZJC. This is when they beat 100 Thieves back at the Esports World Cup. But, you know, they lost to Gen.G 2-0 after that, and ZJC went 13-32. So maybe, and then they lost to Trace Esports the other day. So maybe that was enough for them to decide, because, yeah, ZJC has been struggling heavily. And, like, it makes sense why they might consider, you know what, this guy isn't working out, we're going to change him. But, like, they only brought him into the team a few weeks ago, and they're already blowing it up and bringing back the old guy, which just surely in no world can be a recipe for success. So, anyway, that's what Edward are up to. But as we say, it gets very important very quickly, because they play Tyloo, then they play JDG, then they play Billy Billy Gaming. But as it stands right in the Chinese group stages, they are, I mean, they're 1-1. They did get the win against TEC, but that was before they even went to the World Cup, and now they're 1-1. Billy Billy have already qualified. Tyloo are 2-1. Trace are 2-1. And yeah, maybe Edward will be fine, but like it's not the position that they want to be in by any means. So drama going on there. The Americas is about to get underway very shortly as well. Just a couple of Scrimbux to go through before we close out the video. This being one, no screenshot of this, but Cloud9 playing G2. We know that the G2 Baby Bay team probably expected only to get a little bit better as they get a bit more practice in with Baby Bay over the next couple of weeks. Sad Esports, they were playing 100T and we're actually up 17-6 on this new 100T with Kess. So pretty interesting, right? Because we saw that 100T the other day have a rather good result against NRG, as we know. Kess had a mega debut, but, I don't want to say beginner's luck precisely, but we'll see with 100 Thieves whether they can keep that level of performance up. Obviously, their scrims, I'm sure, are going fine in general, but this was just one example of them having a rather difficult time, surprisingly so. They were playing somebody else, they were up 11-5, so not to say that 100C are one-game wonders or anything. I think they've certainly still got the potential in that roster, and I think they made the right decision probably at the right time to give themselves a chance to do some damage this year. Cloud9 were up 7-2, we don't know who against. G2 it was 5-5, again, we don't know who against. We also had this one, this is probably the Academy, so just to keep that in mind. But we had a TEC versus T1 Academy 14-2 in their favour. And then Wolves, they might be back. So we know that GE, as we talked about a few minutes ago, potentially looking pretty good. I mean, we'll just have a quick check in here on this game to see if anything is, underway on the Corona. Okay, it's currently 2-1 to Global Esports. They just won the pistol and then converted it as well and then lost the round following that. But Global Esports might be back, and Wolves might be back as well, because they're up 15-4 in scrim. So we know that Wolves, they need to turn things around and fast in the Chinese region. They've started off this stage 0-3. They need to get to the playoffs to give themselves a good chance of qualifying for the World Championship, really. So, yeah, maybe Sufat and the guys have found something in scrims over the last couple of days, but I don't know how likely that really is. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Just to close out with this, Rocket Bullets put out something kind of interesting, I thought. He was talking about the option to potentially split up the Americas. I think when the VCT was first formed, there was a feeling for many as to be like, okay, this is interesting that it's all the same region, really, whereas other regions are, might not necessarily have been. Is there a world where you could have VCT North America, VCT South America? I think at some point that would be preferable. Would that be the best idea right now? Maybe not necessarily, right? Like, I don't know how strong the South American region would be in the short term, but in the long term, it might be the right move, because right now, a lot of the South American teams, they really struggle because they have to take gambles on players. It's all based out of America anyway. So, like, it's based out of LA. So, like, it actually is a real issue for the Brazilian teams, especially, and some others, of course, down there too, that I do think that being part of the Americas handicaps those teams to some degree, and many of those teams have been very vocal about this, that they would prefer to have their kind of own region, as it were. It'd be better in multiple regards, bringing up rookie talent and stuff like this, developing talent within their academy structures. So just something to think about, because I think if Valorant esports continues to grow, this will become a thing at some point, but it may not be a thing for at least 5-10 years to come. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.